I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this, but here we are. My name's Mike and I'm 32. I've been with my wife Emily for over 5 years now. We got engaged about a year ago and we're planning to get married in a few weeks. Everything seemed perfect. We had the dream wedding, the pictures, the future plans, you name it. I thought I knew her inside out. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed that we had something real. Looking back, maybe I was a little blind. I noticed small things here and there. Bit of attitude, little lies, trying to hide her phone more often. She'd snap at me if I asked about her day or if I mentioned her phone while she was texting. She'd brush it off with some bitchy comment like I was bothering her or invading her privacy. Honestly, I thought she was just stressed with work, or maybe she was just tired of me asking questions. She's always been a bit bitchy, especially when she's trying to hide something, so I didn't push. Then came the last week. She started acting weird, canceling plans last minute, being overly secretive about her phone. I sensed something was off, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I mean, everyone has their moments, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She was distant, cold even. She'd give me half-assed excuses about work stress or needing me time. She'd say I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, but I knew her too well. Something was definitely going on. What really got me thinking was the night before the wedding. She stayed out late with her friends, which wasn't unusual, but her phone kept buzzing. I saw the texts, short, flirty, and way too familiar. I wasn't snooping, just happened to glance at her screen when she went to the bathroom. The messages from someone named Jake kept popping up, calling her babe and saying stuff like, "Can't wait to see you tonight." That's when my stomach dropped. I felt my pulse race and my heart pound. I knew I should confront her then and there, but I didn't. I was stunned. It was like everything I believed in crumbled in that moment, and I didn't even know what to do with that. Instead, I kept quiet, thinking maybe it was just a flirtation or maybe I was overthinking. But the feeling of betrayal gnawed at me. I tried to brush it off, tell myself I was being paranoid. Still, I couldn't forget those texts. They haunted me. The night before the wedding, I was awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was losing my mind. All I could think about was how she'd lied to me all this time, how much of our life was just a big, fat lie. Then came the day of the wedding. I was supposed to be ecstatic, surrounded by friends, family, love. But I was just numb. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to marry someone who didn't really love me, who was out there sleeping with my best man or maybe anyone else. The thought made me sick. I kept telling myself I'd get through it, that I'd confront her after the wedding, but the truth was, I was already gone inside. My mind was spinning, trying to piece together everything I'd seen and felt. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter what the cost. The wedding day itself was a blur. I went through the motions, smiling at the right moments, pretending everything was fine, at least on the surface. Emily looked beautiful, of course. She always did when she was trying to cover something up. But underneath, I felt like I was walking around with a giant stone sitting heavy in my chest. Every time I looked at her, I saw a stranger, someone I thought I knew but clearly didn't. The ceremony was quick, almost mechanical. I remember my heart pounding as I watched her walk down the aisle, her dress flowing, her face painted with that fake smile that I had started to notice lately. When I said, "I do," I felt like I was saying it to a stranger, someone I couldn't trust anymore. The reception was even worse. I'd smile and make small talk, but inside I was drowning in confusion and anger. I kept asking myself how much of my life was built on lies. How many things she lied about, how many nights she stayed out late just to hide something. After the vows, we went to the hotel for the night. I had this sick feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. I kept thinking about those texts from Jake. I knew I needed proof, something concrete that would confirm once and for all that she was cheating. I decided I'd check the hotel receipts, the credit card statements, anything that could give me a clear answer. I needed to know how many times she'd been with him, how long this had been going on. That night, as Emily was getting ready for bed, I pretended to be asleep in the hotel room. I waited until she was in the bathroom, then quietly slipped into her purse. It was a risk, but I had to do it. I found her phone, scrolled through her messages, and there it was, more proof than I needed. Confirmed conversations, plans to meet, sweet nothings that proved she'd been unfaithful. I saw the hotel receipts, too. Hotel stays she booked for herself and Jake just hours before our wedding. I couldn't believe it. She slept with my best man just hours before I was supposed to marry her. How much more of this was I supposed to take? The shock hit me hard. It was like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated. My own wife, the woman I loved, had been cheating on me during what should have been the happiest, most sacred day of my life. Instead, it was turning into a nightmare. I sat there in silence, staring at her phone screen, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind was racing, filling with feelings I couldn't even put into words: anger, hurt, confusion, rage. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My entire world had just collapsed, and I didn't even know how to start putting the pieces back together. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind made up. I knew I had to confront her, face her, get answers. I didn't want to wake her up yet, so I sat there, staring at the ceiling, trying to think about what I'd say. But honestly, I had no idea. All I knew was that I couldn't go on pretending everything was fine. Not anymore. I needed to know why she did it, how long she'd been lying, and whether she was even capable of loving me or if I'd been just another pawn in her game all along. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about some affair. It was about the life I thought I had, the future I'd planned, and whether I could ever trust her again. When Emily finally woke up, I was already sitting in the corner of the room, my arms crossed, trying to steady myself. She looked confused at first, probably wondering why I wasn't jumping around, crying or screaming like most guys probably would. But I wasn't in a state to do that. I was just numb, hurt beyond words, and sick of pretending everything was okay. She asked me what was wrong, her voice a little shaky. I looked at her, and for a moment I just saw the woman I thought I knew, the one I loved, the one I wanted to spend my life with. But then I remembered the texts, the hotel receipts, the late nights, her bitchy attitude when I asked questions. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I told her I knew everything. I laid it all out, how I'd found the messages, the hotel stays, the lies she told. Her face twisted into that familiar expression she always used when she was caught, defensive, annoyed, a little bitchy. She rolled her eyes and spat out some bullshit about how Jake's just a friend and how I was reading too much into it. But I wasn't stupid. I had all the proof I needed. She tried to deny it at first, but I wasn't buying her lies anymore. That's when the real fireworks started. She got furious, threw some insults my way, said I was paranoid, insecure, and that I was ruining her perfect day. She said she loved me, but her actions showed the opposite. I could see right through her, and honestly, I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray me just hours before we were supposed to get married? I asked her why. I wanted to know what the hell was going through her mind. Her answer: she said Jake was just a distraction, that it was a mistake, that she didn't mean for any of it to happen. She told me she was stressed, overwhelmed, and that she was just having fun. Fun? Really? That's what she calls cheating on her fiancé. I wasn't stupid. I knew she was full of shit. But I also knew that whatever she was saying wasn't the real story. She was just trying to save herself, trying to manipulate her way out of the mess she'd made. I felt my blood boiling. How could she be so callous, so indifferent to what she'd done? I couldn't even look at her anymore without feeling sick. My whole life had just been turned upside down in a matter of hours. The woman I loved, the woman I was about to marry, had been sleeping with my best man, lying to my face and trying to spin it all as some kind of innocent mistake. I wanted to scream, but I held back. I knew I had to keep my composure, at least for now. But inside I was seething. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see it coming. I replayed every moment, every word, every glance she gave Jake. I started questioning everything. Was I blind? Was our whole relationship a sham? How much of what she told me was a lie? I felt betrayed on every level, not just as a husband, but as a man who thought he knew his wife. And I realized right then that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed to decide what to do next. The betrayal had cut too deep, and I knew this wasn't going to be something I could just brush off. It was going to change everything. That night, after she stormed out of the room, I sat there alone, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, burning rage. I thought about all the plans we made, the future I envisioned, gone in an instant. I kept asking myself how I could have been so naive. How did I not see the signs? How long had she been lying? I was furious at her, sure, but mostly I was hurt. Deep down, I was devastated that the woman I trusted most in this world had betrayed me so completely. I also felt humiliated. I was supposed to be the groom, the guy who knew what he wanted. Instead, I was a sucker. I trusted her, believed in us, and she'd just thrown it all away with some guy named Jake. That thought made me want to puke. The worst part. It wasn't just about sex. It was about her lying, manipulating, pretending everything was fine while she was cheating on me. It made me question everything about our relationship, about who she really was. Was she always like this? Or was it just Jake? Was she genuinely capable of loving me, or was I just a fool who got played? I decided I had to get some answers. I wanted to know how deep this went, how many times they'd been together, if she'd do it again. I knew I couldn't stay in that hotel, couldn't stay under the same roof with her right now. I was just too angry, too hurt. I grabbed my phone and started digging into her bank and credit card statements. I needed proof of her lies, her secrets. And then I saw the hotel receipts, multiple stays at that same hotel, booked just hours before the wedding. She was sneaking around, lying to me about where she was. I felt a mix of betrayal and disgust rise in me. How much more was I supposed to take? I kept asking myself, what kind of person does this? How could she do this just before our wedding? Was she even planning to tell me the truth, or was I just a placeholder for her to manipulate and use? The more I looked, the more I realized that this wasn't some one-time thing. It was ongoing, and she'd been hiding it from me for who knows how long. I thought about confronting her again, but what was the point? She'd already lied to my face, told me she loved me, then slept with my best man behind my back. That was the moment I understood I couldn't keep pretending that this was just a mistake or some slip-up. It was betrayal on a level I'd never imagined. And honestly, I was starting to feel numb, like part of me was dead already. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. All that was left was the anger, the pain, and a deep sense that I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. I knew I had to make a choice. Stay and try to fix this, or walk away and start over. But in my gut, I already knew what I was going to do. I couldn't stay with her, not after everything. Not after she proved she was capable of lying, cheating, and destroying what little trust we had left. I needed space, time to think, to figure out how I'd move on from this. Because right now, I was just a man broken, trying to piece together a life that felt like it was built on nothing but lies. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever had to face. I moved out of the hotel, took some time off work, and stayed with a friend who didn't ask too many questions. Every morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach, replaying everything: her lies, the sex, the betrayal. I'd lie awake for hours, wondering how I hadn't seen it coming, how I'd been so blind to the woman I thought I knew. Honestly, I spent a lot of time in anger, pure, unfiltered rage. I kept thinking about the nights she spent with Jake, the way she looked at him like he was her salvation. She always acted like she was the queen of the world, but underneath it all, she was just a manipulative bitch who used people to get what she wanted. The worst part, knowing she'd lied to me right up until the very end, that she'd been sleeping with my best man just hours before we were supposed to say, "I do." That's a level of betrayal I don't think I could ever forgive. I started thinking about confronting her again, but every time I pictured her face, her fake smile, and her lies, I felt the urge to just cut ties completely. I realized that trying to salvage this was pointless. She had already shown her true colors. And honestly, I didn't want to keep playing the victim. I knew I deserved better, someone honest, someone who would actually love me for who I was, not lie, cheat, and manipulate their way through life. One night, I sat down and really thought about what I was going to do next. I decided I'd tell her I was done, that I couldn't be with someone capable of that level of betrayal. I didn't want to be around her anymore, didn't want her lies to ever poison my mind again. I knew I needed to cut her out of my life, for my own sanity, for my health, and for my future. The trust we once had was completely gone, and I didn't see any way to rebuild what was broken. So I reached out to her, told her I was leaving for good. I told her I never wanted to see her again, that I'd find someone who actually cared about being honest and faithful. She tried to worm her way back in, of course, with the usual manipulative bullshit, telling me she loved me, that she'd change, that it was just a mistake. But I wasn't naive anymore. I knew her game, and I didn't want to be part of it. I was done playing the fool. I needed to get away from her toxic lies and start healing. Looking back now, I realize this was the wake-up call I needed. I learned that trusting blindly can leave you vulnerable to the worst kinds of betrayal. I learned that some people are just not worth it, no matter how much you love them. And I learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away, even if it hurts like hell. Because at the end of the day, you have to protect your own happiness and peace. And if someone shows you they're not worth that, you're better off without them. Now, sitting here a few months after everything fell apart, I can honestly say I'm starting to breathe again. It's been a brutal ride, no doubt, and I still wonder sometimes how I let it get so far, how I trusted her at all. But I also realize I've learned a lot about myself through this mess. I've learned to listen to my gut, to never ignore the signs, and to value my own happiness over someone else's lies. The biggest lesson, though, is that betrayal cuts deep, and it changes you. I used to believe in the idea of soulmates, of love conquering all. Now I see that some people, no matter how much you want to believe in them, are just not worth the pain they leave behind. I'll never forget what she did, but I also refuse to let it define me. I know now that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, and I won't settle for anything less. Looking back, I realize that this experience, as painful as it was, has made me stronger. It's forced me to confront my own feelings, to rebuild my sense of trust in others slowly. I've started dating again cautiously, and I'm learning to open up again, but on my own terms. I don't want to be the guy who gets played anymore. I want a relationship built on real trust, honesty, and mutual respect. To anyone out there going through something similar, stay strong. Don't let the lies and betrayals define you. It hurts, and it's going to hurt for a while. But time really does heal, and eventually you find your way back to happiness. Just remember, you're better off without someone who doesn't value you enough to be honest. Keep your head up, and never settle for less than you deserve.